Let's give a warm welcome to our Mayor David Condon as he comes up and shares with us.
Well, thank you very much. And as we get started, if I could, Andrew, could I have you help me out here? We can pass out a few things. You're going to get two things, and I'll start with some opening comments and get more specific because I know we have folks that have these. What you're getting is the state of the city, Vision 2020. It's a little larger document. And then a specific handout on the bridge. And I thought, if you want, I can talk very specifically to the bridge and really what it is. But I think more importantly, as we begin today, a vision for what I believe to be the major asset is our community. It was 40 years ago that the world was invited to Spokane. And Spokane was on the world stage. It was 1974, Expo 74, believe it or not, the year I was born. I was born that February. But I think what is so important and what I think is so amazing with this group that is here tonight is that it was a group of 6 to 10 people that came together maybe 4 to 7 years before that and said, we are going to do something crazy. We are going to be the smallest city ever to have the World's Fair come to Spokane. I'm not going to lie, when I thought about running for mayor some 6 years ago, I Googled expos. And I thought, maybe I could be the candidate that says I'm going to bring the World's Fair back to Spokane. Well, I'll tell you, I looked it up and I thought, there is no way that David Condon is going to bring Expo 2025. By the way, it's spoken to all the way. I think it's 2025. I forget what it was, maybe 2023. But interesting enough, as I did a little bit more research, I found that, guess where it is? And I mean, you're going to start Googling on your phones and tell you that from my memory, let's just put it that way. I am a politician, but no. Literally, if my memory serves me correctly, I think it's in Brisbane, Australia in 2022, 2020, whatever that last year was. And I sat there and I thought, there is no way that we're bringing it from Brisbane, Australia, or Auckland, or whatever, wherever it is down in the south, to back to Spokane. But then I looked back, and it was the exact same thing some 40 years ago, a similar city, whether it be in Australia or New Zealand, and then coming back to Spokane. And I thought, who were these people that thought Spokane could be all of these things that you see here on these signs here in the front? Any of these. Who thought that Spokane at that time? And I also sit there and I think, who in their wildest dreams thought we're going to rip out of the center of our city even at that time, 75, 100-year tradition of our economic engine? If you were not on the railroad, you were nowhere. And so when we petitioned as a community to bring the railroad here, and then some 75, 85, 90 years later, we said, you know what? We really don't want you in the center of our city. And not only that, but you think about it, and you think about what happened at those depots, those waiting rooms. That's where the president came. The president of the United States, that's where he came. That's where your loved ones, when you decided to come all the way out to the west, that's where Grandma and Grandpa came. That's where you said to your son or daughter who just graduated from undergraduate and was going to Chicago to medical school. Or like my parents did, they went to Creighton in Omaha, Nebraska. That's where you said goodbye to them. And then kids left as freshmen and came back as doctors. You didn't come home at spring break. You didn't come home over the summer. You left and came back. That's where parents said goodbye for the last time to their sons and daughters and said goodbye to them to the First World War, the Second World War, Vietnam. That's where they received them back for the last time. And there was a community that came together and said, all of that is yesterday, and we're going to change our vision to something different. Could you imagine the pushback they got? This is our economic engine. So anybody that was thinking, economy and jobs, are you insane? Those that had an emotional tie, like I said, any one of those, you could imagine the visions in parents' heads, kids' heads, brothers and sisters and grandparents' heads of what they had with those depots and what you saw there. I only bring this up because at the exact same time, what were the other two major things this community did? I'll give you an example. One divided this community nearly in half. I'm a mayor, think of it. Infrastructure, roads, I-90. At the same time we said, because now it was the Johnson years, right? So we went from the railroads, if you're not, what? If you're not on the interstate, you're yesterday. So this community, and I bet if I asked a whole ton of you here, you would remember. And there's good and there's bad. Not only that, we put I-90 right through Riverfront Park. Right through Manitou. And you sit there, no, Mayor, no, we didn't. Yes, you did. You put it right through Liberty Park. Liberty Park at the time was Riverfront Park. It was Manitou combined in one. What do I mean? It was this cornerstone of the amazing park system that we all know today, designed by world-renowned landscape architects who designed not only the Boston park system, the New York park system, and yes, the Spokane park system. I know this one because of history, but I also know it because my dad grew up there with his family. There's a little white clapboard-sided house. It's for sale right now, right on the last little rock that sticks out there. I actually went through it. I have to love the real estate agent. My aunt, my dad's sister, said, the house is for sale. Let's go look at it. So we went and looked at it. But that's where my father grew up. But you see the remnants now as you go through on I-90, right up there. You see the amazing rock walls. You see all of that was the center of our community. And we decided to do that. And I bring it up because it was definitely an issue that was not widely, or apparently it was widely supported, but definitely had a big contingent that didn't think this was the right way to go. So what was the other, again, put on your mayor hat, your municipal hat, what was the other major piece of infrastructure that we developed in the latter part of the 60s, beginning of the 70s? Bingo, there you go, the airport, which was literally in the middle of nowhere and looked like a spaceship landed, right? That original building that looked literally like a flying saucer. And, in the middle of nowhere, right? I mean, out in the middle of the West Plains out there. And you sit there and you think of the community leaders that came together and saw that vision. That saw that we had to move from a rail economy, although it be still a huge part of our economy. I don't want to downplay that at all. There's still a huge rail economy here and a huge rail backdrop. But that being said, we couldn't invite the world to our city without the airport. And so they set out to do that. The community set out to do that. Yes, government set out to do that. But they were wildly unpopular, in particularly the crazy idea that these people had to bring the Expo 74 here. And so back into my world, I said, I think I might do this mayor thing. Who should I go talk to? So who do you go talk to? The people who brought Expo 74 here. So I cold called, by 4 or 5 of those people. They were all men at the time. And I literally sat in Rockwood Manor's lobby with a gentleman by the name of Wendell Satry. And he gave me 2 to 3 hours of his time. I met and sat down with the last mayor to be reelected. Anybody know who that is? Dave Rogers, yeah. I sat down with Dave Rogers. I sat down with Jim Coles, and I sat down with a handful of others. And you know what was interesting? Each one of those conversations that I had, it brings me to what I want to talk to you tonight about, One is sharing a vision with our community that the community can be behind, but the reality that there is adversity to many of those visions. And in this room, I guarantee you, I could bring up the bridge and there would be probably 65% of you against the bridge and literally maybe 35% for it. But I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about what the necessity, because I was not somebody that supported the bridge. Was I a flip-flopper on the bridge? I don't know. Maybe you could find when I answered a question during 13 of my debates, whether at the time I thought that the bridge was the right thing to do or not. But I'm here to tell you, and I'll expand on it, why it's such a critical piece of public infrastructure for a vision and a vision for our community, much like perhaps the I-90 was, or like my description of Riverfront Park is or was, or what the airport is or was. And so I guess now let me share with you, and you have in front of you, and if I could, I'll talk for a moment about Vision 2020. So if you open that document once, you'll see on one side a message from me, and so I'm talking about this nice little blue pamphlet here. You'll see a message from me, and on the right-hand side, you'll see a list of accomplishments, of awards, of recognitions that our community has received over the last 36 months, both individuals and as a city, in 3 key categories that I believe truly is the vision for the city. And I want to discuss at the end today a 4th that at the time we debated heavily but did not make the current Vision 2020. But you see accomplishments in the area of becoming safer, stronger, and smarter. You open it up once more, any vision literally needs to have goals, needs to have objectives. And you will see a list of goals, 5 goals across the top, that we want to be a safer community. We want to be the safest city of our size. You see the objectives, the programs, and the different projects that we have under that area. We want to be the fastest growing job market in the Inland Northwest. We need to have a goal of jobs and economic growth. You see there in the 2 middle ones, both budget and infrastructure. As a city and as a city organization, we want to be a leader in municipal innovation in different areas, both in finance and in the way we fund our infrastructure. In particular, I'll speak for a moment, one of those pieces of infrastructure, meaning this bridge that's right out here to our right. And the final, and some of you just commented on it, that a great doctor just talked about it, about our quality of life. We want to be unequaled in the quality of life we offer all of our citizens. So both, and quite quickly, people quickly go to things like recreational opportunities or our motto, our regional motto of near nature, near perfect. But we also fundamentally need to be a quality of life and provide human services to those most in need. Those in our community that ultimately have a need and have found themselves in a place in their life that none of us ever choose to be at. But because of a myriad of decisions or different environments that they were portrayed to, they're there. And I would love to, in a moment, if you had a chance, and if not necessarily the topic that I was supposed to speak on today, talk about the innovation that's happening in city government, of where you bring those two together. You open it up all the way, and you'll see what I call city by the numbers. A whole slew of numbers and equations and that really make up who we are as a city. Some are accomplishments, and some in areas that are very interesting. If anybody, the big question, what's my favorite number on there? Anybody know what my favorite number on there is? Right dead center in the top, of course. The mayor gets prime, real estate when you're designing your own brochure. 0. Actually, that's my favorite number, 0. I'm the finance guy, right? But it was an amazing accomplishment by nearly 1,800 and some odd employees that for the first time in many, many years, we were able to align the resources that our citizens give us with what our expenses were. For years, we had gone every year in a situation where we always ran expenses substantially higher than what our expenses were. So this was the first year that our city council received a budget that did not rely on either layoffs or substantial service cuts in order to get us to that number. But at the same time, and I'll just brush on some of these and talk back to the bridge in particular, it was the first time, though, we did that with, at the same time, adding 25 more police officers, adding 12 more firemen. Why? It goes back to the original. Tomorrow morning, I'll open up a new fire station in Eagle Ridge. But it went back to that first goal with a litany of objectives that you'll see under that, to be the safest city of our size. It is then we needed to make those investments. We needed to make those difficult decisions. We needed to have a police force that doesn't stand away from its citizens, but actually engages its citizens. You will be the neighbors here of the 2nd Precinct. The 2nd Precinct, I think I just signed the contract a day or two ago, but we'll be going into the Intermodal Center. The rest of us call it the train station. But in government speak, we call it the Intermodal Center. It's the beautiful red brick train station there. The 2nd Precinct will go in there. The first one went in Hilliard, right on Market Street, a building that the city owned. Believe it or not, the Intermodal Center, the city owns it also. So we went with the premises rather than going out and buying new property and changing new property, taking buildings off of the tax rolls to go into buildings that the city currently owns, pay for it, heats, air conditions, plows, you get it. So the second one will go in there, so that we can fulfill our vision also not only there, but in partnership with our city council, with the leadership of Ben Stuckert on East Sprague, to look at that area and how do we make the investments, how do we make noticeable differences there. The piece that the administration needed to do is look at the security there. Separately, as to be the safest city of our size, it also means to make sure that we have the best emergency medical systems. And so that's why across the country, there's fire departments that are coming. I think now we're on our 6th fire department that are coming to our community to see something. And I invite you to go to to YouTube and watch the videos. One is the alternative response units. Single vehicles with a single firefighter providing non-emergency care to what do you guys suppose is the percentage of calls to 911 that dispatch the fire department? Guess how many of those are medical, percentage-wise? I hear 90. I'm not the auctioneer. 90. 82%. Of the medical, guess how many are non-emergency? Just over 60%. So you're talking the vast majority of people still are responding or seeking medical care by using 911. What the doctor just talked about having a clinic, a community-based clinic, a clinic with multidisciplinary attributes and how they administer medicine is so critical, because guess what? I'm not a doctor, but it's very difficult to have multidisciplinary care in emergency room. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, they do it, and of course there's nurses there, and there's pharmacists and everything else, but they're dealing with an episode, an episodic event, an emergency. They are not dealing longitudinal with somebody's health that a multidisciplinary team can do. And so we launched that about a year ago, and we have people from around the country that we aren't doing that. A single firefighter, most often we have old Ford Explorers, so most often they're in a Ford Explorer, but they really could be in anything. The other thing that we're doing, with not only, and really it was the leadership of our medical community and the medical society, but a group called Hotspotters, to literally go out on the streets in a multifunctional team and to meet folks that find themselves along I-90, along Division, along Pacific, right? Literally a block or half a block away. And to meet with them and to figure out, how do we meet them where they are? How do we provide the critical health care that they need, but at the same time dealing with a multitude of others? You are in the cornerstone of that of one of our partners, Frontier Behavioral Health, a key partner in making that happen. But how do you do that, and how do you how do you provide, and like I said, back to the quality of life, how do you provide that quality of services to those citizens as a government? Quite frankly, and I've said this before, I don't think City Hall is the right place to provide that, but the partners that came together in that, just financially alone, can anybody guess? We did a pilot program with 12 individuals that selected themselves to enter into Hotspotters. So that basically means it allows the providers to share information in today's world, and I think it's the right thing to do. You have to give permission for different agencies to share your information. So we took 12 of those individuals. Guess what the average savings per month was per individual? If you were just looking at money, not the humanistic side, not the issue of dealing with their addiction or their health care, but just straight finance. $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year. One gentleman, if I could show you the videos, I would, and go home and look it up. Hotspotters on YouTube. We have a channel. Spokane City has a channel. One individual claimed, and I haven't fact-checked it, but I got the nod from many in law enforcement, the number one arrested person in Spokane. Again, haven't fact-checked it. He's up there. Let's just say it that way. Another gentleman, 47 visits to the emergency room in a single year. You know, and so as we sit there and we talk about this, you are at the cornerstone in the university district to do this. This is not, entirely the idea of the medical school, but the innovation that is coming out of the medical field here, that's coming out of the emergency care providers from nursing and pharmacy, and yes, in medicine and physical therapy and everything in behavioral health. This is the type of innovation that's happening here in the university district. This is the type of innovation that only can happen because of the culture of Spokane. I travel much in the country, and when you see this type of culture that we breed here, whether religiously affiliated or otherwise, it is part of who we are as a culture. Probably the reason why the Healing Rooms can do so well here and be the headquarters for so many others that are doing this ministry's work across the country, across the world. Let me dive deep, and then I'll take some questions. I know I spent some time in safety. I spent some time in the quality of life. I'm sure you're not here to get an update on the budget or update in some of those other areas. But in particularly, and I say this, and I think the city has a primary responsibility in this area, and that is in the build-out of our infrastructure. I purposely brought up three very controversial 45-year-old debates on infrastructure. I-90, Riverfront Park, the airport. So now we have a couple pieces of that same controversy happening today. A decision that this community as taxpayers, this state as economic leaders, and also as taxpayers needs to decide. Is it this community that needs to decide whether we have a north-south corridor? One of the major requests in a statewide transportation package. Love to talk to you about that, no problem. I'm a big supporter of it. I think it keeps Eastern Washington, Eastern Washington. I'll say quite quickly, I think economically it is the 19th most traded route in the United States. But I also will talk about the humanistic approach. It keeps Deer Park, Deer Park. It keeps Addy, Addy. It keeps Chewelah, Chewelah. It keeps Colville, Colville. Why do I say that? When you talk to the residents of those areas, what is their critical issue about getting to Spokane? Why do they come to Spokane? Healthcare is how you'll get them, number one. Yes, they may need to come down and buy something at Macy's, but guess what? Now more and more, they're getting those in their area. Amazon gets them Macy's. Orbitz gets them travel. But what they can't get through the internet entirely, we have great advances in telemedicine and others, but they can't get health care. And when you really sit down to residents that want to live out the rest of their life, where they raised their family, where they probably had a ranch or a small farm, or just worked in the lumber industry, not just, but worked in the lumber industry, or just wanted to live in God's country. And those of you that have been north, it's God's country. But what would cause them to move back or move closer to the city is the transportation to either weekly, monthly, or otherwise medical visits. And so to me, as I sit there and I think it keeps our Eastern Washington. Is it a major piece of infrastructure? Yes. But at the end of the day, it also allows us to keep those rural parts of Eastern Washington, especially north of Spokane, rural. They don't have to just live on the edge. They just don't have to live on the edge. And that's what's happening right now. They build right to the edge, and then they build right to the edge. Well, if you had that as a spine between here and Canada, you have that opportunity that you don't have to have just to the edge. You literally, and would love, I know we're at a place of ministry, but I'm more than happy to debate. But I want to now talk, and I'll finish with this, and it is the University District Bridge, Gateway Bridge. And I have to confess, and I think I told you earlier, that I was not a believer in this, say, 4 or 5 years ago. Perhaps, and I don't want to say I was, there's an amazing group led here in the University District, an amazing collaborative group that comes together on a monthly basis, the University District Board. But it's a vision that I think we need to share with our community. You will find now on any of the presentations by my administration, you'll see on the base of that, we'll talk about Vision 2020, but on the base of that, you'll see the traditional landscape or the traditional buildings of downtown Spokane on one side. And on the other side, you will see the skyline of the University District, but interesting enough, it will have a large bridge that does not exist in today, but it's on the base of every presentation that anybody that serves in my administration gives, or many of the presentations that they give. And I purposely did that for a couple reasons. When you look at the traditional skyline of Spokane, I think of 5 things that represent the city. And those are Clock Tower, the railroad history. The river, our history from time and forever, from our Native Americans and those that brought them here. And I think it's so appropriate that the campus here is called the River Point Campus. So the river, so either the Monroe Street Bridge that resembles the river or gives you the idea, but the river. The merry-go-round, that's not on my list, but because it doesn't have a skyline feature. But you'll see over here the pavilion. Really the rebirth of our community and one that was again centered on the river, still coming back to the river. But the pavilion. I always say something either in nature or Native Americans or anything in that area. The new seal of the mayor represents all these. And I sat down with the leaders of the Spokane tribe, and we looked at the seal of the mayor's office, and we said, this needs to represent who we are as a community. So we talked about those different features. That's the same thing that's on the base of the presentations in my administration. But on the other side is the University District. And key to that is the University District Bridge, which is a cable span bridge. And I think it's so critical that we do this for our community. And as you see on the sheet that was handed out to you, yes, it is an expensive bridge. It is. Imagine what I-90 was. Imagine what the airport was. Imagine in the real dollars when you look at Riverfront Park, what this community that not only voted down once, but voted down twice, any reason to raise money for Riverfront Park. And so as we look at a bridge that ultimately is going to connect a base of education, a base of research, a base of the world coming to our stage. Imagine the students that are going to go to Washington State University pharmacy school, their nursing program, their medical school. Imagine the students that come to Gonzaga University and the programs they provide, the programs that Eastern Washington University provide. It is critical that in today's vision for our city, we again want to invite the world to our stage. You guys do it in the ministry you provide. The ministry that is headquartered in this building for around this globe brings the world to the stage. You literally are doing it. I know you're bringing a doctor's conference here and a director's conference here, and they will come from around the world. And they are going to come to the heart and center of our community, which is the future of our community, which I believe is to be the University District. It is the investment in the next generation. And to have you be a cornerstone, a landlord, a major landowner, a component, a real thought leader in this area, just physically and literally in the thick of it. I think it's going to be an experiment that it's definitely a visionary experiment. But I think as I come to more and more, it's so grounded in a foundation that's the future of us. And I do want to thank you for being a part of that. To be a part of it, and this bridge is not a bridge to nowhere. I mean, could you imagine what you already are here? And what is going to grow around you, what is already growing around you, which is most from those that are the hardest hit. I grew up on the floor of the House of Charity. My mom volunteered there for 30-some years. She was one of the ones that selected that location. My dad, when he was financially benefited in his life, he thought, what can I give my wife who raised his 10 children? And he gave her, if you walk in there, the dining room is named after my mother and the things that I learned there in the House of Charity. As a young child, trying to figure out the difference between what my dad told me with his 7 brothers, or his 7 sons rather, my brothers, who said, work, 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 work. If you don't work, you're going to end up on the streets. Work some more, work, work, work. And in another sense of going with my mom, and I still remember to this day asking her, Mom, there's the same people here every day. They don't seem to work. Dad says if you work, you live on the street. So why are we doing this? Or more importantly, why was she doing this? And as she taught me the lessons of empathy, she taught me the lessons of learning where someone comes from and meeting where they are. And in her life and her spiritual taking, that she wanted to witness to them of what that meant. That after taking care of 10 kids all day, that she'd pick up her buddy who ran a grocery store and take food from that grocery store and go down literally every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, when I was older, just Wednesdays, and making lunch there. And to see that, and you are in the middle of that, and you're embracing that, and that this is a part of our urban environment. It is who we are. We want jobs and economic growth. We all need that. But at the same time, as a city and as a culture, we must come together and serve all of our citizens. And you all do that in such a huge way every day of what you give to this ministry. So I'll finish back with my mayor's hat on, that it truly is a vision from this community. It is a vision, yes, not only for 2020. Heck, at this day, it's only 6 years away, or 5 years away now, but really beyond that. How as a community become safer, stronger, smarter, and I quite frankly would love to, they never say do this, add a fourth, and that is to be healthier. Because I think there is a myriad of ways of how we need to become healthier, and how do we do that as a people? How do we do that as a city? How do we help each other to get there? Because if we truly are going to be the city of choice, we need to focus in those areas. We need to focus and have true passion for what makes us the city of choice for all of our citizens, and most importantly, for the next generation of citizens that choose, because in today's world, it is very, very difficult to always choose to be in the Northwest, to choose to be in the city of Spokane, and we have to realize, and I think actually the University District, of bringing people here over and over again, they will find that they want to choose to stay here in our community, and most importantly, that our own children want to choose to stay here. So thank you so much for what you do to make us the city of choice and all the great work that you do.
Wow, awesome. Someone told me that the architect for the Gateway Bridge is the same one that did the Sundial Bridge in Redding, California. Does anybody know that? Is that true?
That would be news to me. I don't select architects.
Yeah. Well, Michelle and I are from Redding.
Oh, wow.
We grew up there, and we're leaving to go there tomorrow. And I do know that the Sundial Bridge in Redding is a focal point for the entire city of Redding. They've redeveloped what they call Turtle Bay around it, and people come from all over the world to visit the Sundial Bridge in Redding, California. So we're going to see the same thing here.
All right.
Hallelujah. All right.